are big sharers. Learn what we've learned during the course of a week only on Pod Pourri, a magazine that will always be loaded only on the Podcaster, powered by Timber Media. We're ready. It's Pod Pourri time. I never know how to say this word.
Puri Baji.
Sheetal, Avi and Ahalya coming to you with a brand new podcast. Been a very, very long time because our clients have been keeping us busy.
Very busy.
You know, one of the pegs of this series when we first thought about it was that we are the podcasters for India Inc. and we work with so many different clients and we find out so many different things over the course of 1 week.
Right.
Today is truly just going to be a mixture of a bunch of things. I can't promise that they're all client related. Mine for sure is because World Mental Health Day is on the 11th of October. And I've been deep diving into a lot of, mental health related conversations. And one thing that is obviously the focus this year is the theme of employee wellness. So my topic is around that.
Interesting, because, I've been reading that there's a lot of fatigue in people over all things wellness, well-being, etc. after COVID. One of the ratings one of our clients told us of content that people want to consume at the workplace, one of the ratings showed up wellness, the bottom of that list. Do you remember that?
I remember that. The other thing is I do have to sort of preface it with the context of the time that we're recording this podcast, because obviously employee wellness has come under a big microscope because of a certain event.
Yeah, events actually in recent times.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see where people's priorities lie, because it's not that people don't want employee wellness benefits, of course, but it's the areas and the ways in which those benefits actually have a tangible impact on them that determine whether they will be successful or not. Right. So I came across something called an LSA, which is a lifestyle spending account, which companies have. So it's basically an amount of money that is set aside, a corpus that they can then allot to different employee well-being initiatives.
I'd like to see how that allotment happens. It's these things look very nice on paper, but then if you try to figure out how they're probably going to decide whose lifestyle expense is more worthy of cutting them a check.
Yeah.
Problematic, right? I don't know, but yeah.
And I know that it's not going to happen in India anytime soon.
Yes, that is true. That is true. You can barely pay proper checks on time.
Avi had one very interesting fact that he threw up when I brought up LSA. Yeah. What was it?
So a lot of these Japanese jails and prisons, right? When you look at them and when you see them on TV and stuff, it looks better than, most offices. More comfortable.
Let's send you to Japanese jail.
I don't mind.
What
and the food.
What would be your crime?
I just go hand myself in,
That's correct. Knitter somewhere. That's probably going to be a crime.
So these LSAs often cover things like exercise equipment, gym memberships, home office equipment, because a lot of companies who offer remote work, so you can actually, as an employee of that company, use that money to buy yourself like a sun lamp or something that will alleviate your mood during the day. Family wellness, student loan repayment. So this is like the scope of work, right? Under an LSA. Scope of expenditure under an LSA. But here's something that I found very fascinating. While most LSAs are set aside to boost productivity, to improve overall well-being. By the way, this is all from a survey that was conducted recently at the beginning of this year. It also, is targeted at increasing job satisfaction, effectively attracting and retaining talent. But the thing is, the talent, over 2/3, 68% of people who responded to this survey said that they would prefer to discuss stress and anxiety at work with a robot rather than their manager.
Okay.
And an even higher percentage would be open to having a robot therapist or counselor, which I found extremely telling.
Open to a robot counselor? I mean, instead of a real human?
Exactly.
Or just a...
Hashtag first world problems.
But that's quite crazy, right? My point is that employee wellness has come under the spotlight. It's a big conversation. It's the theme of this year's World Mental Health Day observance. And yet I feel like no one has accurately figured out the solution to this
Yeah.
entirely. And LSAs are great. Employee benefits, wellness benefits are great. But I think surveys and feed forward is probably the best way to go to understand exactly what people are looking for and what will truly make them happy.
This reminds me of way back, about 10 years ago or so. One of our early clients came back to us and said, hey, why don't you have some celebrity guests on the internal radio show? So we said, okay, we can try and see, but nobody's really, Amitabh Bachchan is not going to pick the phone up. If I say, hi, this is Timber Media, he'll say who, right? And what for, etc. I mean, if he picked. But soon after this, like for about a week or two, we were trying to figure out, if somebody has a roster of these celebrities, all of that. Doesn't happen. And then the client calls us back and he says, you know what, hold on to that thought because the increments were just announced. And we don't want to be in a position where people come back and say, oh, all right, so you have a celebrity on the podcast. Likely you paid them some money to, even if you didn't, likely you paid them some money. And if you had money for that, how come you did not have money for an increment? So the idea of celebrities was shelved, which is good for us because it was a nightmare to actually source one for just this sort of purpose.
If you had called Amitabh Bachchan, I'm sure he would have come.
We are big sharers. Learn what we've learned during the course of a week only on Pod Pourri, a magazine that will always be loaded, only on the Podcaster. Powered by Timber Media.
So imagine there's an LSA and it's this like limitless fund, right? What is the one thing you would ask for if you had access to an LSA?
Actually tough one, right? Because then you start to think about what is my responsibility and what is a company's. But if I can ask for anything, then I'd probably send all of my bills to the air.
Yeah.
Well, why would I, bother to discriminate, right? Because
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for maybe a soft pillow for comfort at night is company's problem because then if I sleep well, I'm productive at work, right?
Exactly.
So there's nothing that doesn't tie back into productivity at the workplace if you look at it.
It's interesting to see how much responsibility is now being put on the workplace and like the executors of the workplace.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating.
And as it should be, because I think the workplace is where you spend a significant portion of your waking hours. And then in that case, the workplace must commit to everything that makes you comfortable and happy and everything. So on paper, it is the right thing to do. But in execution, I think there are lots of loopholes because then there are lawsuits to think about, right?
Also, do you think it's like a generational thing? Like, it's more prevalent with Gen Z or Gen Alpha?
He just points his hand only to me. Do you think it's a generational thing?
And then asks me the question on the other end of the spectrum. But you know what? I've always wondered, and I've come to this realization. I'm completely off the mark, but I think Gen X is likely to be
the best,
possibly the most tolerant. Exactly. Of all generations, simply because you come into a space and then your ideas are being challenged, but you don't want to be that person who says, I refuse, because that was that was the generation before me, that I will not wrap my head around LGBTQIA+, right? So I want to be the person who says, I can do this, I can understand what this is, although that's not how I grew up, right? That was not the context, the social context that I am familiar with. So what happens is you can throw anything at us and we'll say, all right, fine, I think that should be all right.
And we used to treat floppy disks like DVDs. 1.4 MB of space. Yeah. It was all you took for happiness.
Wow. Yeah. That's adorable.
Yeah, that's a deep statement.
I was really trying to unpack that. Because I was like, what is that?
Do you know what a floppy disk is?
I know what a floppy disk is. I made my dad's...
By the way, to Gen, you were Z, right?
Gen Z.
Gen Z. I made a pen stand for my dad with old floppy disks.
You know what? We should call this the XYZ podcast.
Maybe.
All of them here in this room.
Okay, swiftly moving on to the next thing after gifting Sheetal a pillow.
So, my story this week is a bit of a sad story with a happy ending. So, this issue is about this paralyzed man who purchased an exoskeleton for $100,000. I mean, the fact that he could afford an exoskeleton worth $100,000 itself is a big thing. But the problem arose when 10 years later, he approached the manufacturer for a repair because a small part had malfunctioned. And the worst part is the manufacturer actually refused his request for help, saying that it was out of warranty and stuff like that. So I think that the broader theme that I'm trying to like bring out is how people like us become hostages to corporate policies and stuff like that, and where even simple issues are not addressed because of corporate high-handedness. And as the story went along, they discovered that the issue was a very minor one. Only a $20 battery had to be replaced. Even that, the manufacturer couldn't do anything. And fortunately for this paralyzed guy, the media took note of this and created a huge public outcry. And because of which, the company actually, helped him and repaired his exoskeleton.
Yeah, this is like scary and sort of kind of ties back into what we were talking about, right? Which is to say that the intention is there. First of all, there is technology and there's expenditure on creating products that enable persons with disabilities to live a life that they want to live, the kind of life that they want to live. On one hand, there is money that's being put on the table to research and development and building products and devices towards that end. On the other hand, you're not able to fulfill the promise at the other end of the spectrum once the person starts to use the product and then encounters a faulty device. And that, the reason I say it ties back to the corporate idea of the fund, right? The fund we're talking about on paper sounds great, but it's in the execution, it's in the delivery of that promise sometimes that there's an issue. But this is a story that all of us should take cognizance of, because we're at that place where we're all excited about the various different promises held out by AI and this and the API and whatever else, and we still don't know how that promise is going to be delivered on.
We could file this away under Kali Yuga files.
Yes, Kali Yuga files.
That's another
name for a podcast. XYZ, we've come up with 2. I don't know what the next big idea is going to be. Are you going to give us a podcast idea?
No.
Name, at least?
I will execute them. Okay, moving on to...
Softer things, nicer things.
Okay.
Dolls. Let's talk dolls.
Dolls. Love that.
Look at Avinash's face. Suddenly he's like, what kind of doll?
It's not the one I'm thinking.
Right. No, it's not the one you're thinking of.
Okay.
It's that time of the year, right, when you see a lot of newspaper articles, a lot of content on social media. I just woke up this morning to a beautiful reel of a fantastically done golu in somebody's house. And then again, as is the case with most things you consume on social media, they're hardly ever connected, right? So I get this message from a friend of mine who sends me this Barbie's first ever Diwali doll, which Anita Dongre co-created, sells out mere days after launch. For what? For $40. So this is the price. It came out on my birthday, by the way, 4th of October.
$40 for a Barbie doll?
Exactly. An Indian Barbie, a Diwali Barbie. And this is in the US, by the way. And then Mattel has apparently said that this doll celebrates India's cultural richness with a worldwide audience and all of that. It's released in the US. We've always had our Barbies with the Choli.
Correct.
That's nothing new for us.
Yeah.
But this is the official, Diwali kind of a release, I'm guessing. And then I scroll down and then I see this other mention of another brand that I came across about 5 to 7 years ago, maybe more. Because again, I grew up at a time when you didn't have skinny dolls like Barbie. You just had the fat ones. I'm sorry to use that word. I don't mean that as a derogatory word to anybody. I'm sorry. It's minefield, right? I'm getting into.
Yeah.
But yes, American Girl is that brand, and they have a line of dolls that are these 18-inch dolls. So they're really big. And they are regular dolls, like
regular is good. That's regular, the correct word.
Regular, sorry.
Normal.
All right.
No, that's a fair word is my point, because Barbie is for sure not... fair.
See, conversation is a minefield. But so American Girl, turns out, also released an Indian-American focused doll called Kavi Sharma. I think it was in 23 that they did this, and it was the Girl of the Year doll. So they have this Girl of the Year doll releases that are available only for that year. But then I go and check. It's actually available on the website. It's 2024 for a discount, 40% discount or something. So $75 you can get yourself Kavi Sharma. But Kavi's released spawned again a media debate on the color that they'd chosen for, the Kavi doll. it was not too dark. It was a light olive. And so were the makers, whether they'd even thought of what colorism in India is all about, because parents are more likely in a place like India to buy a fairer looking doll than a darker looking doll. Were they oblivious to the message that they send out to this group of people on a lighter skin, a lighter olive, if you know what I mean, for Kavi? And then there were whole other, question marks that were raised on, the choices they had made with this particular doll. And so this doll saga somehow, from Golu to this random post on Anita Dongre inspired doll to American Girl brings back this conversation about what interesting times they are that we live in, because it's difficult to even now purchase a doll without looking at what it really means and represents to a bigger audience or someone else out there in the world. American Doll, for whatever it's worth, has been committed to diversity, inclusion, and they have a bunch of dolls that look different. You can customize your dolls to have fair skin, dark skin, light hair, green eyes, brown eyes, whatever. But a simple idea like a doll represents so much more, and also brought me, then I was reading about this Golu stuff and I came across these Marapachi dolls, which are you're meant to have, like in a Golu set, you normally have a pair of these rosewood or sandalwood or teakwood made dark dolls. They are usually extremely dark in color. Husband and wife pair. Again, there you go. You're assuming a certain heteronormity to relationships, which might have not existed in the old days, but nevertheless. So you have this couple doll that is part of every set. And that was the only doll set that had no coloring on it. In the entire set, you've got these brightly colored Golu dolls, blue with pink and mitai pink and something neon yellow and all of that, especially in the 80s and 90s. But this was the only sort of thing that stood out for me so much that I remember this from my childhood. My mother had this tradition of keeping Golu. Right. So it goes back and it's sort of, everything sort of becomes this jumble, and then a podcast is a good place to unjumble all of that, right? Not that I've unjumbled anything, but made an effort.
And this again ties into what you were talking about, the minefield that we're living in at the moment, because no matter what you do, you end up offending at least somebody. Yeah. So
I never played with Barbie when I was a child. Whenever I got gifted Barbie, I literally was so annoyed because I felt like I couldn't do anything with these dolls. So unfortunately, there were 2 drawers in this cabinet of mine that were just like one drawer of just legs and one drawer of just torsos, because I would just like dismember.
Sounds like
that.
Yeah, same here.
Wait, who was gifting you Barbie?
No, I used to dismember my sister's doll.
Because I was like, there has to be something more to this.
Gifting you Barbie dolls is not the question to ask him. Progressive people were gifting him Barbie dolls.
Correct. But then he broke them, so their liberal hopes were crushed immediately.
We are big sharers. Learn what we've learned during the course of a week only on Pod Pourri, a magazine that will always be loaded only on the Podcaster, powered by Timber Media.